Hey guys, thank you for stopping by my channel today. So I was just kind of out and about and I came across a very cheap makeup collection and I wanted to know if it actually was cheap. It was super affordable, and what caught my attention about it was the fact that it was cruelty-free, not tested on animals, and like I said, also really affordable. But I was unfamiliar with the brand. It's called City Color. So I decided to make an investment, which wasn't very large, so that I could kind of see what this brand was about and whether or not it was worth it to not spend a lot of money so that you didn't get crap. So if you're interested in finding out what my thoughts are on some products by City Color, then just keep watching. So I came across this brand called City Color at a store called Five Below, and I did some research, and there are quite a few locations in the United States, but they're more like central country to East Coast located. So my West Coast folks, I'm sorry about that, but since I'm not from there anymore, I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. But this store called Five Below is just that. It's kind of like a platinum dollar store where everything is $5 or less. So I came across a very large makeup display, and everything was priced pretty much $3 to $5 for like palettes. And I was like, how was that even possible? And so I grabbed kind of a selection of stuff. And so let me just kind of give you my overall impression. I was pleasantly surprised. I could not believe the level of quality I was getting out of something like a palette that cost me only $5. The brand is cruelty-free, which is very appealing to many people. It does contain talc in it though, which I think is what brings the price point down. And some people with sensitive skin are not necessarily a fan of talc versus the more natural sorts of ingredients. But I thought, you're leaving the puppies and the bears and the, I don't know, whatever else they test makeup on. You're leaving them alone, and so that makes me pretty excited. Now the pricing in the Five Below store, like I said, which is where I purchased these, is not like where you will find elsewhere. If you do not have a Five Below near you, I did a little research. It is available at their own website. There are also pieces available on Amazon. However, again, I will point out they are not as affordable as I was finding in store. All of that being said, the powder products that I picked up are all incredibly pigmented. Like pigmented like you couldn't imagine. I mean, especially with the presence of talc, I was kind of expecting it to all just kind of be pale or fair. Super pigmented. Also, the powder itself doesn't make a mess. It doesn't have a lot of powder pickup, meaning that the powder products are packed in there pretty tightly. P. But they basically do not make a mess. I did not have a problem dusting blush powder everywhere. I did not experience a ton of fallout. As far as the wear is concerned, I would say that it is long enough wearing. I will say that I applied my makeup many hours ago on purpose, and I wanted to film later in the day, and I think it's holding up incredibly well. And you guys know I've got oily skin, and so my skin texture would be the classic form of skin that would want to eradicate a non-long wearing powder product. And so the fact that it is sticking around also was very exciting. I think I already indicated I only picked up some powder products. I believe they had lipsticks on the shelf, but not much else. When I went to their actual website, they do have a wider variety of different products, which I'm now very excited to kind of look into. But let me give you some commentary on some of the things that I picked up. They had a contour palette, which looks, oddly enough, like all of the other contour palettes that are out there, which cost us a very pretty penny. So let me say this about the contour palette. This white shade here is very scary. I'm not sure what you're going to want to do with this white shade unless you are supremely fair skinned. This white shade is a little bit scary. The kind of pink highlighter-y kind of shade gives a very nice sort of reflect, but again, it is a little bit on the very pale side, but maybe that's what you're looking for. The brown contour shades though spread the range. They go from very, very light to pretty dark. I wouldn't say very dark. So these are the 4 contour shades that are in the palette. I actually contoured with the lightest shade that there is. And that showed up very nicely on my somewhat light skin tone. The second shade's a little bit warm. These 2 shades get a little bit darker and actually a little bit cooler as well. And so you can mix and match, and you can kind of develop whatever form of a contour shade that you are looking for. But talk about pigment, right? I mean, this is just kind of, you know, fingers in it and just kind of a swatch. Pretty easy to work with, pretty easy to blend out. I did wind up using a very light hand because, like I said, these powders just are so pigmented. So I picked up a couple of blushes, also from 2 different variations within the same line. This, I believe, is an older form of the blush. This is what they call their HD blush, and it's called Warm Apricot, and it's a very pretty shade. Again, very pigmented and very, very peachy. The other style of blush that I was finding is called Be Matte Blush, and they are all matte, and they are a wide variety of colors. There's even kind of a brownie one, which might actually either wind up working as a contour or a bronzer, but I don't have that one, and I'm super eager to go back and get it. The shade that I picked up is called Blackberry, because it just was kind of different. You know, it wasn't the typical peachy pinky nude. And again, these blushes kind of remind me of NARS blushes in that they're just so pigmented that you want to go in with a super fluffy brush, so that way you don't wind up picking up too much pigment, especially when it comes to blush. You do not want to over blush because then you just wind up looking freaky. I am wearing Blackberry today, and again, I put this on hours ago and it's lasted pretty well. I feel like this next item is the gem of the collection. My collection. I'm like taking ownership. It's the gem of the collection. It's my favorite piece. It's called the Sunkissed Trio, and there's a lot of these out in the drugstore right now. Right now, my favorite one actually is by Rimmel. It looks like a miniature version of this one. This one is like major in size in comparison. This is like a hit for me. So the blush itself, I love how they label it too. It actually says blush, bronzer, and highlight on it, as if you couldn't tell. But the blush was really pretty. It is a very peachy color. It is peach. There is not a lick of pink in this entire blush. It's very peachy. The bronzer itself is so creamy. In addition to being pigmented, it's just really creamy. It's not matte. It does have a slight sheen to it. It is what I am wearing today on top of the lower contour. And here it is swatched on my hand. Just a very friendly, easy to use bronzer. If you've got super dark skin, it might not show up very well for you. They did have different variations of this palette as well. So you might be able to find a palette that has a bronzer that's slightly darker. But I love this bronzer. This bronzer is like one of my new BFFs. The highlighter, no glitter, no speckiness, which is what I would have anticipated from something that was so affordable. It is just a beautiful shimmer. It is on the light side. It is also on the warm side. But that, look at that. That is like, that's major glow right there for something that only cost me $5. The last thing that I have for you is probably just my least favorite, although I like it more than I did initially. So as I've been using it, I've been liking it a little bit more. It's an eyeshadow palette, and it's called Figtastic. I guess because it's kind of got just some warm, kind of purpley, golden, rich sort of, it just reminded me of fall, actually. The other thing it reminded me of was the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. I mean, when you look at these two side by side, no, they're not exactly the same, but they just kind of caught my attention as being kind of in the same family. They're like cousins, you know? So I am in no way saying that the City Color Figtastic palette is like a dupe for the Modern Renaissance Anastasia palette, because there's definitely not as much pigmentation in this palette as I think I was kind of expecting. After having used the other powders first, I used the shadow palette last, and I was like, I kind of want you to have a little bit more pigment. I am wearing it on my eyes today, and I actually was kind of impressed now, being that this is probably the 6th or 10th time that I've kind of tried this palette out and have been playing with the colors a little bit. I do use MAC Fix Plus, not because of fallout, but because I do want to intensify the colors just a little bit. Now I've seen this at retail price at $14.99. Again, I picked it up for $5. I don't think it's worth it for the $14.99, but I do think it's worth it for the $5, because this shadow is not creasing, it's not fading. It's a little bit harder to work with. You do have to blend a little bit more. You do have to dip into the pan a little bit more in order to grab enough color. One of the shades, which I thought was going to be a fantastic crease shade, this shade right here, this transition shade, applies a little bit splotchy. It doesn't go on as smoothly or as creamy as that bronzer did. Holy cow. And so I was kind of looking for a little bit more out of this palette. But let me say this, I did discover something pretty fabulous. When this palette was giving me trouble and I was really trying to create an entire look using all, if not most of these City Color. I discovered that because I didn't have a good transition shade in that palette, and because, again, some of the shadows were just not as wonderful as I was hoping, I went back to the contour palette and I totally used all of these shades in order to create a really nice, warm, not so much smoky, but just a really warm, friendly eye look. This is kind of like your base shadow palette. You know, you can complement with some colors or some shimmers, anything to kind of amplify it, but it's a really good place to start. So that's all I have to say about the City Color line of cosmetics. It was really cheap, and it turns out it actually wasn't that cheap, which was, like I said, a pretty pleasant surprise. I am on Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. Please check me out over there if you get a minute. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not one of my subscribers, I welcome you to subscribe. And by the way, if you are one of my subscribers, thanks so much for coming back. P.S. A couple of you guys have been asking me. You can see up here in my background that there is something that resembles a quote that is creeping down into the screen. It's basically my motto here at YouTube. There's more to life than looking good, and there really is. We oftentimes have some real major life issues that we're dealing with. So there is more to life than looking good, but you gotta look good too. How we feel about ourselves and our level of self-confidence will impact anything that we try to do. And so, although we're not always gonna worry about what we look like, we should still worry about what we look like, only because it makes us feel good. Okay, so thank you again for spending this time with me. I hope you have a really good rest of the day, and I will see you next time. Thanks.
And so this brand by City Color, no, it's not this brand by City Color, the brand is City Color. Silly. So I am in no way saying that the City Color Figtastic